All right. So my name is Erica Tan. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist at Portland DBT Institute, and I've been at PDBTI since June 2010. So in the DBT world, I've been a clinician for going on, I think, 13 years. And one of the reasons that I got certified in 2017 was that I felt like I had reached a plateau in terms of my treatment. Like I felt like I was adherent and also didn't feel like I was as adherent as I could be. And so this was for me like a practice of building mastery in terms of really upping my game and just being much more precise and incisive with the treatment. And what I found was that going through the certification process, like really sharpened my skills so that I, you may or may not know this about me, but when I started doing DBT, like reciprocal communication was what I leaned heavily on. I did not use a ton of irreverent communication and certification because I wanted to pass the test and I wanted to pass like the videos. At that time, we also had the case conceptualization. Like it really required for me to become more irreverent. And that practice in and of itself has just been so helpful in terms of interactions with my clients. So that's why I got certified. Kim.
Hi, so yep, I'm Kim Skerven. I'm also a licensed psychologist I live in Milwaukee, and I'm at the Center for Behavioral Medicine, which is just outside of Milwaukee. I've been there for a long time, and I have been certified since 2015. So I was like November 2015. I think for me, a lot of the things that you said, Erica, would apply to me as well about why I decided to get certified. But I think also for me, I have this very strong like affiliation, I guess, of wanting to be part of a community and support a community. And I'll just like a little tiny background. I first got trained in DBT. I did my intensive training in 1997 when I lived in New Hampshire, of all places. And then when I moved back home to Wisconsin a few years later, there was no DBT here at all. And it was really like a very strong part of my clinical identity that just wasn't here. And then the team here got built, and I've been on this team for a long time. So I think just this kind of affiliation with a community is really important. I think I have a strong sense of like wanting to support that and having loyalty and wanting to build that community, if that kind of makes sense. So I think just personally on that level, that was another reason why I decided to do the process, in addition to like everything that you said as well, Erica, like just like building mastery and challenging myself and just wanting to be a better clinician all around. So so I think, I said this already, I think I've been certified since 2015. So that's me.
Awesome. Thank you guys for being here and being willing to come chat with us today. Think of it as like office hours with your new certified besties. So if you have questions, I said it, go ahead and send them directly to me, or you can put them in the chat for everyone, whichever makes you feel more comfortable. We've had some pre-submitted ones, so I'm just going to start out with some of those. We get a lot of questions like this one. So I'm going to read this question, but we get sent this question about mindfulness so much. So my question is about the mindfulness practice. How do we demonstrate our own daily personal practice? Can you provide examples of types of formal mindfulness trainings that would meet the criteria? So whichever one of you would like to answer. I know this is kind of a tricky one, but go ahead.
Yeah, I can jump in. I will say just off the top, if you haven't read through the applicant handbook that's on the website, there's a lot of really good information in there. I think in terms of the formal training, I actually was just looking this up earlier today to make sure there's not necessarily a length of time for the training. It's more that the training It says any training that specifically spends a significant amount of time teaching the principles and practice of mindfulness will meet the requirement. So personally, I connected with we have a couple of local mindfulness organizations here in the Milwaukee area. So I connected with one of those and took a formal training with them that involved teaching and also practice. And a day-long silent retreat was part of that. So that's what I did for my formal training. And I know, Erica, you did a different formal training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did a 3-day silent retreat with Cedar Coons prior to certification. And so periodically, like for example, Portland DBT will host Cedar Coons, and there's a yearly mindfulness retreat that people can do. I think more than anything, there just needs to be like some sort of practice, right? Like if you have a daily yoga practice and you go and you do this, like I think somewhere in the applicant handbook, it says that there may need to be some form of documentation, like somebody needs to be able to verify, I think, that this is a practice. Or if you go to if you go to a Sangha and you have a weekly practice there, if somebody from the Sangha can just write a quick letter that says like, yep, Erica Tan is there weekly, is an active member and sits like once a week, I think that is also sufficient.
Okay, thank you so much for that. We have Rita would like to face-to-face ask a question. Rita, if you can unmute and ask your question, this is a great time for that. Thanks.
Yes, sure. Hi, everyone. So I do have a quick question though, and I'm not sure if I will get an answer right away or not, but I think this is an issue that is important that I bring up now. So I come from Egypt, and I actually had submitted my application for licensure 10 days ago, something like that. And I'm very mindful that one of the requirements is independent licensure, which is something that we don't have in Egypt and something that we don't have in a lot of countries in the Middle East. So I was wondering, what is DBT-LBC doing to accommodate for marginalized countries? Because if we want to disseminate DBT in the MENA and all over the world, which I've co-founded the DBT inpatient and outpatient program, like we're working day and night to make that happen, then we kind of need to problem solve for that together. So I am suggesting somehow that we look into how other certifying bodies have accommodated for that, like EFT, for example. I've learned yesterday that they've removed that requirement for countries like Egypt. And I'm wondering if you guys have an answer now as to how the DBT certifying body can accommodate for that. And if not, if this is an issue that you guys can speak about, something like that, because this is going to be a recurrent issue. I understand that I'm probably the first, but I'm working now on training and helping other people basically take that route. So if there's a way we can get an answer for that, or at least bring up that issue, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, Erica, you may know more about this. I don't know the answer to the question, and I really appreciate the question. Erica and I also are, and Jessica as well, like on the diversity committee for LBC. And this is probably something that we could take up with the committee actually, because this is really important. I don't know if right now, if there is an infrastructure for that. Do you know, Erica or Jessica, like what would happen if someone from a country that doesn't have licensure in the same way, what would happen with that? I don't know what would happen with that right now.
I haven't heard, and I think it's actually a really great question that you bring up, which is like, well, you know, what is the function of this requirement? Just like
exactly
in,
that,
right? Like
exactly. That's what
like
I was asking yesterday.
Yeah, right. Like in DBT, we want to know what's the function of any behavior, and so what is the function of this requirement? I suspect that because, like, truthfully, I think there may not have, actually, I don't want to misspeak. I'll just say that I think the majority of folks who are DBT-LBC certified do tend to be in North America, and North America does require licensure. So that is probably the lens that was used with that particular requirement. And it makes a ton of sense that it's coming up as a question. So
exactly. There's only one. there's only one certified DBT clinician in the MENA region, which is Basma Kirani. She's my supervisor. And only recently, Basma was certified last year, or I think 2 years ago. But Jordan has a license. Jordan is not considered a marginalized country, but I'm talking about Egypt. I mean, countries that are third world countries that doesn't exist. And especially, I mean, in Egypt, the law says that psychologists do practice under the license of a psychiatrist, which means that if anything happens, the psychiatrist is held accountable. So it makes me wonder, what is the function at that point of requiring independent licensure? If I mispractice, I'm going to be the one punished, not even me, the psychiatrist. So I don't understand, how is that stopping me from the licensure? Yeah, how is that affecting the Linehan Institute?
So yeah, let's follow up with the executive board about that. I was going to say, I know that someone in your area got licensed, but I didn't know that they were in a country that has licensure and that you don't. So I was going to say, we figured it out once, but maybe not. So can you direct message me your email so I can follow up with you after this meeting? And I'll just consult with the board.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Rita.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I am going to ask a question. A couple people have asked similar questions, so I'm going to combine it into one question. How to study for the exam. Some people are wondering, there's some information on the website about what is in the exam. It says like there's 10% on structuring treatment. How can we get more specifics about that? Any idea? Like, they want to know, there's so much material, it feels so dense. How do I even get started? That is the general question. So can you answer that?
It seems like this is a little bit individualized. Like, for me, it felt imperative to go through the 1993 Marshall Linehan authored manual, right? Like, and so reading from cover to cover, and I know that there's one training organization like TIC that has a virtual like study.
It's like back to the book.
Yeah. And
I think it's called,
goes backwards, and she goes through each of the chapters. So I think that can be super helpful in addition to reading. So ultimately, like, I don't know that people are necessarily going to be able to pass if you don't read the manual, right? Like, and it makes a lot of sense. So I've had interactions with folks who have used it as a reference, but if you use it as a reference, like, I don't read the dictionary from like cover to cover. If I'm only using it as a reference, I'm going to miss the big picture. So there is a function in going from one side to the other, like, and going through all the chapters.
Yeah, I did do part of the back to the book. It really is cool. I did it like after I took the test, but it's great, great review. I don't have, I have a very boring answer, which is read the text really carefully, and that's how I prepped. Is that I, similarly to Erica, I reread the book again from cover to cover, but made sure to do it really slowly. So I did it slowly and like thinking, so not a skim through, but like an actual reread, if that kind of makes sense. So sometimes we just skim through things again, but I chunked it out and just reread it intentionally from cover to cover and thought about just how I would think about it now. The first time I read that book was a while ago, right? And so thinking about how it applies to my practice now and the clients I'm working with now to just get a little more depth of things. But I really think doing that is the best prep. I think I don't think I have anything else to add to that. I just think that that's the best. That's where everything is. Everything is there that you need.
The other thought that I had is, if you have a study buddy, like, having that accountability is really great, because I got certified with a friend of mine who used to work at Portland DBT, and we would meet up regularly, like every month. This is what we're reading, this is what we're studying, and every month there was just a different task, right? Like, so the first part was like preparing for the exam. And then because we had the case conceptualization at the time, like we wrote up our case conceptualizations, we shared them with each other. We even watched each other's tapes and gave like feedback. And then it was just a really helpful process to have somebody else to go through that. Because it's a gauntlet, right? Like you can anticipate that it's going to be about a year to get certified.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Next question is someone in the meeting here wanted to say that they were just feeling a little concerned, kind of anxious, wondering about how to ask clients to agree to record the 3 consecutive sessions and get those to an adherent level. So it's a little bit of a 2-part, but can you speak to like how you talk to clients about recording and how you get their permission to be able to submit them to LBC and talk to them about that? And then if you want to talk about getting sessions to adherence, that could be a separate part.
Yeah, I think so. One thing is it might kind of depend on where you are and what your normal practice is. So at my clinic, recording is just kind of part of the general practice generally. Like we just do a lot of recording. So we're having conversations with clients right off the top about videotaping. So it's a little bit easier to come in later and say, hey, is it okay with you if I use these tapes for certification? Here's the reason why it would help, right? But I think that that conversation would probably be a little bit different if you're not regularly recording. So I think that's one thing I would just put a plug in for is just making recording part of your general practice, because it's helpful to do adherence checks and you know, having other people on your team looking at your work or going back in and reviewing your own work, that kind of thing. So I would put a plug in for that. And then, yeah, I mean, we can talk a little bit more about the adherence maybe next. I don't know if Erica, if you have other things about recording specifically.
I use a little bit of self-involved self-disclosure, which is that I want to be the best possible, like the most effective DBT clinician I can be. And one of the ways in which I can do this is by being able to watch myself and to see, like, what is it that I could have done differently? What is it that I did well? And unfortunately, my autobiographical recall is not like 100% all the time. So when I record and I listen to it, it's like, oh, these are the things I could have done better. And then having other people's feedback also makes me a much more effective clinician. So I think most people don't want a shitty clinician. So you could use a little bit of a reverence and say, like, you know, this helps me to not be a shitty clinician.
I like that. I think also like just saying to people, a lot of times I think clients find it helpful when I say the people watching it aren't going to be paying attention to you. They're actually paying attention to me and what I'm doing or not doing, right? So it's not about like people watching and analyzing you and thinking about you so much. It's really about me that people are looking at. So I think clients find that to be a little relieving.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Let's do like a next part 2 on like resources, strategies, things that you recommend for checking on your adherence. I will say multiple people have asked this in different ways. Is there any resource, like someone's asking for the video work sample, are there resources? I know Erica just put my favorite one in the chat too. Are there resources that people can use to check on their work first? Are there things that you could do that might increase your adherence or at least decrease your anxiety about lack of adherence? And I think, so can you answer, kind of respond to those kind of adherence questions?
Yeah, Erica put it in the chat there. Melanie's website and materials are like a game changer, like a game changer. There's so much on there. If you haven't gone to check this out, there's, I think, a 2-hour-long webinar on there that you can watch that explains how to use her adherence manual. There's practice sessions on there to watch that you can adherence code and then compare your codes to experts who have coded that same session. I mean, it's phenomenal. I just cannot say enough about it. And importantly, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, if someone else knows this or remembers this more accurately, but I do think that as part of her research, it suggested that our own coding of our own work is less accurate than having someone else look at it. So doing your own coding of your own sessions is great. Having someone else on your team do it for you and give you feedback is probably better and going to be more accurate. So I would just absolutely say that's the place to go to learn more and to start practice looking at things from an adherence kind of place rather than it's a different kind of mindset. Like if you're supervising someone, you're looking at a session differently than if you're adherence coding that session. So I think like learning how to think like that, learning how to have that mindset to look at your work or a teammate's work, you can find a lot of helpful information on that website about it. So yeah, Erica, what do you think?
The other thing that I just want to highlight is that Melanie's got like a training that she does in May for adherence coding. Like I'm signed up for it, so I'll be there in attendance because for me, like as much as I love reading things, I also appreciate like being taught in person and getting to see things and having things explained to me. It may also be a thing where if you can dear man your consultation team to learn to use the DBT-ACI tool, like the adherence coding tool, like whenever y'all share sessions, if that's something that you do at your clinic, maybe it's that everybody like does this together. And I know that it's also the other side of the dialectic is that, yeah, it takes a lot of time, I think, to learn it. And sometimes folks are like, look, I am so tapped out by the end of the work week. I don't know that I want to be able to put it, like, I don't know that I have the energy to put this effort in. And at the same time, like, I wonder if there's a way that we can build mastery together to learn how to do this.
Just that's reminding me, Erica, I'll just share this. We did do that on my team when Melanie's website went up. We actually started meeting in small groups at the end of team. And at first we kind of went through the materials together. We watched some of the sessions in the small groups, talked about the coding. So we just made it part of what we intentionally did as a team so that everyone was kind of learning it exactly how you're saying, Erica. And then you're building in just more of a practice of like sharing and coding like each other. So we now hold that time and we do smaller consultations, watching video, looking at adherence. So we've just built that in.
Yeah, I mean, I love like shifting towards a culture of if you can be recording more often, if you can be pitching your clients that instead of not just for this, you would obviously need to get consent to send them to LBC separately. But if you're already recording, that consent is different. I always go for you get 2 brains for the price of 1 if you let me record. Someone else can help me be better for you. And it just, then there's less pressure on like those 3 sessions. You have a bunch to choose from, you know. But I know that there are other constraints. Someone asked if there are examples of individual sessions. So I just want to say specifically on that website, there are like, that's the bulk of it is you're watching individual sessions, you're coding those and you're getting feedback of like how somebody else code. Like it's fabulous. But yes, those are examples of coding sessions. So.
And there's like redos on there too, which is ultra cool. It's like, so you watch the session and then there'll be a little like, so here's a way that could have been done differently that would have been more effective and more adherent, right? So it's very, very nicely put together.
Okay, next question. Someone wrote in with some specifics, but the question is more generally like, does it have to be a BTech training to meet the training requirements? What meets it? Like, what kind of things do I have to prove to meet the training requirements? Like, I know that we talk about BTech, but does it have to be BTech? So can you speak to that?
My understanding, it does not need to be BTech at all. I think really any training that meets the criteria or that you can demonstrate that it met the criteria is fine. I don't think it needs to be BTEC. Does anyone know differently?
I think it's like that it needs to be an intensive in some way, shape, or form, right? Like, so whether it's online, whether it's in person. So just a note that I think the requirement, I think I read this somewhere, is like 40 hours versus like 16 hours.
The requirement is 40 hours, but I don't believe it has to be in an intensive format. Like you can have it be more ongoing training or individual. It doesn't have to be that like full BTEC style either, is my understanding. It has as it is written. I will pull up the words that are written and drop it in the chat in a second, but it's 40 hours of didactic training.
Yeah.
That you can submit proof are specific DBT training hours. So they have to all be 40 hours of specific DBT training, but
that would make sense to me what you're saying, Jessica, like the style of it or the way that it's delivered might like differ, but we're again like kind of going back to what's the function of the requirement, and it is to have that much time of didactic that meets like everything that an intensive would meet.
yeah, someone's asking what does the difference between a foundational training, which was 40 hours, versus an intensive training. Those are just the language that BTEC uses, so people are kind of familiar with it. That like week-long 40 hours of intensive or foundational are kind of this words for the same thing. But you don't have to do that style, and you don't have to have it be BTEC. Like we're not a training organization. We're not approving, or like there's not like a wrong training organization. It's DBT specific training. And so that could be in a postdoctoral fellowship within your thing, that could be at a specific thing. You training can look different. So if you have specific questions about that, you can DM more specifically, but we'll go on to the next question. Another person who is here is feeling like they worried that maybe their cases wouldn't count for the application process. They're looking back. I have my 3 cases for the application, not the ones I'm planning to record. And what if I didn't ask for things like behaviorally specific treatment goals or spell that out really specifically, but I got life worth living goals? Is the DERS enough of an outcome measure to count for that? Like, how can I be sure? So can you guys speak to a little bit of like the requirements for the 3 cases and how they might know?
I haven't thought about the 3 cases requirement for a long time. I'm going to try to find it in the handbook. My thought is like, just submit it. And if there is something, that you even see that like you didn't ask for, like you could address that in the application, I would think. That's my gut, is like just submit them if you have everything. Would you do something different, Erica?
Well, I was just thinking that like, if the majority of the session is a DBT structured session, like I imagine that will help a ton, right? Like, so if you go, like just thinking about the examples on Melanie Harned's website, like there are sessions that missed things and they still met like the threshold for adherence. So
yeah.
I don't know that I don't think the specifics of video coding are shareable at this moment in time in these town halls. And so consequently, I think this is where having our coworkers or people who know DBT watching our videos to give us a sense can be really helpful.
Yeah. I also have another thought about this, actually, now that I think about it more. If you have the 3 cases and they were completed DBT cases, you had behaviorally specific goals. I would think, like even if you didn't have like a treatment plan where you wrote those down or something, right? If you're doing DBT, there are behaviorally specific goals. It just may be that that they weren't articulated in that way, or you're not thinking of. So I would just say also maybe just think through that a little bit, because I just suspect that they were there if DBT is what you were doing with those cases, right? Because we're always doing like targeting behaviors and like moving toward behaviorally specific targets. So I think it's likely that they are there.
I was just pulling up the document and it says submit 3 consecutive video sessions of a stage 1 client. Pre-treatment sessions 1 through 4 are also considered stage 1s. They need to be complete sessions within 2 years of submission in around 45 to 60 minutes. So I think I've had people ask me before, like, what about stage 2 clients? And you could submit videos for a stage 2 client. It just may be a little bit more difficult to identify like some of the targets compared to a stage 1 client.
Yeah, I think they're asking about the application, the 3 cases in the application, which stage 1 or stage like the stage 1 is a requirement for the 3 cases in the application, because they want so that you've completed a full year of DBT. But the video cases, it's not a requirement for it to be stage 1, but it's kind of recommended because it's easier, as you're saying, to like show that you're attending to SI when SI is there right there. And it's, yeah, they're harder cases, but when the treatment's designed for that, like it's easier to check off the adherence boxes because you're doing this stuff, you know. It sounds like the person's has submitted her 3 cases and is getting feedback, but it's just a reiteration of the write-up request. So I'm just going to kind of wrap this up and say a little self-disclosure that I also got my application kicked back with feedback on my write-up of my cases. And that is really, I don't know, it just feels, it's hard. And I would go more behaviorally specific in your write-up, even if it feels like in hindsight, did I really have behaviorally for specific goals? In order to target your life worth living goals, you guys had to be doing something. So stop and think back about what you did and work back from the life worth living goals that you remember. It's hard to think back 2 years. Take what you remember and work back on like, what behaviorally specific things would I had to have been targeting to get me there? And I think that is sufficient. Like, you have what you have, work a little bit backwards, but try to be as specific as you can 2 years later. Like, and yes, the DERS is an okay, sufficient outcome measure. Okay, so moving on to the next thing. Actually, I want to take a little break before people might sign off too quickly at the end to say something, and I'll like say it again at the end. But when you guys were talking about study buddies and having like meeting people in the certification process, we had expected that question to come up in this town hall. And so we thought ahead about part of the hope of this hour is that you guys can get answers from us, but I know that not everybody has people who even knows any, like Erica goes, have an accountability buddy. And they're like, no one I know is in the certification process. Where would I find these people? So here is our first attempt. We've not done this before, so we might have not figured out all the things. Here's our first attempt at trying to help connect people. For the people who are in this town hall, I'm going to put in the chat a Google form that you can complete and send us your information. It says, I'm disclosing that you can share my information. I'm only going to share the information with other people in this town hall, like set up so that we can connect you with other people who are in the certification process. So we're not going to blast this out to everybody, but after this, if you fill out the form and give us our information, I'm going to put all of you in a group email and follow up with you. So if you want that accountability buddy option, it'll be a peer-led. This isn't going to be like DBT-LBC led, other than we're just trying to connect you. And I'll be starting the email thread, so I'll be there to like answer things if you need, but it's really about connecting you guys. So I'm going to drop that in the chat now. I'll circle back to it at the end, but I didn't want people to sign off and miss it. Okay, moving on from me talking and back to y'all talking. So I don't have any more, I don't think, questions that I haven't attended to live. If I miss it, I'm so sorry. Send it to me again. If there are barriers or places that you're getting stuck, like this is the chance to ask now. So I'm going to go on to the next a question that we've had submitted while people have a chance to write in. I would love some more guidelines on recording requirements for the videos. Would it be possible for the video to just show me with audio only for the client if the client does not wish to show their face? I know there's some written on the website about that, so we can obviously, I can put that in the chat too, but anything you guys want to say about recording requirements?
I think it's just helpful to make sure, one, that you're seen, and if you're doing telehealth, like it's so much easier to be able to record on Zoom because you get the gallery view. And I think submission of the gallery view might be helpful, or because the speaker view kind of flips back and forth. They just want to make sure that you're doing and saying things that are not invalidating of clients, right? Like if your client is expressing sadness and you're like sitting there like, you know, smirking, not that anybody here would do that, like that might be perceived as invalidation. So all that to say,
I
like,
might do that. I might smirk.
you might smirk. I mean, it depends on the client, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
it's appropriate to the relationship, but more than anything, it's just got to be clear audio, clear video of you. Did I get that right, Kim?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if there's a requirement that the client is seen. It really is about, so whoever is watching the video can see what you're doing and how you're responding. And that's to see you. So I don't know that there's a requirement. Is there something in the written, Jessica, about a requirement?
Yeah, I
the
just dropped in
requirement
that.
is just, I was gonna say, it's you only are required to do audio, but you're gonna be at a disadvantage because they can't code you for some of that, like radical genuine body part. Like it will be better for you to be able to be seen, but there are some places where logistically the company won't let you. If you're in a spot where logistical limitations are that the client or the company or whatever won't let you, it is possible to do an audio submission. It would just be better. More uncomfortable for you, I'm sure, but easier to code. So overall, better.
So just in terms of logistics, because I submitted my videos prior to Zoom being a thing. So I used my laptop camera and positioned it so that the camera was facing me and you could hear my client's audio. You saw their feet and it was just like largely centered on me. And so if I was going up to the whiteboard and doing something, I would turn the camera physically, like so that they could see what I was doing on the whiteboard, turn it back to me. And so if you're doing it over telehealth, it's a heck of a lot easier.
So we just had someone submit a question, which I think would be wonderful for you guys to weigh in on. This person is vulnerably sharing that they have done consultations, they've read the book several times, and they've taken like B-Tech trainings. Not that we accept or endorsing any particular trainings, but I'm sure they're trying to say like, this is a legitimate source. And they failed the exam twice, and they're just wondering like advice for they really want to be certified, and they're just feeling obviously really frustrated and it's hard to keep going in those moments. So any advice, thoughts?
Yeah, it is hard to keep going in those moments. I think yeah, that would be pretty demoralizing. I think I have a thought about, well, here's a question. So when I took the exam, it was back when it was on paper and not computerized. So do you get actually a score now, or just is it just pass fail? Because I'm wondering, like, is there evidence that like what you've been doing, like has the score moved in any particular direction? But I don't know if you actually get a numerical score. It was on paper, and then we got like I don't even know, maybe a letter or something, but
It's pass fail, and we don't disclose the cutoff. So
okay.
Like you just get no feedback that you could have been one question away, which is like, I don't know, the thought that always sits in my brain with pass fail.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I recently did a consultation with somebody who had also like failed the exam, and it was kind of interesting because the thing that we focused on was actually reducing their anxiety about studying, as opposed to focusing on the content. Because I think when they were going through the manual, like they didn't go through the manual the first time, they were just using it as reference and had done DBT for a long time and felt like that was sufficient. And so they were really surprised when they didn't read it. And so the thing that's different about what the person who asked compared to the person I did the consultation with is that the person who sent in the question has read the manual. And so I wonder if, like, I'm just spitballing here for a moment. Like, I wonder if it's helpful to like approach it from a beginner's mind strategy, where it's like, as you're going through it, maybe to like enjoy the read. There's something about how learning doesn't occur in the learning occurs in the absence of fear. And so if I'm approaching something and I'm feeling a lot of anxiety about doing it, and I'm noticing feelings of dread every time I pick up Marsha's manual, like, oh my God, like this is the thing. And it becomes a cue for like this distancing emotionally and cognitively and behaviorally, like I'm not going to get as much from it. So that was just the coaching that I offered this person that I was working with, which was like, let's make this fun. Like, bring your favorite bevy, go and sit outside under the trees, lie in your hammock or whatever it is, prop your feet up, play some really pleasant music, and just like enjoy it like you're reading People magazine. And let's see what happens. I think it might be worth a shot. I don't know.
I'm going to add in that there are several people DMing me just wanting you to not feel alone. Person who wrote that to me, that several people have failed and tried again and are still at it. Like, you're not the only boat. I would encourage you to drop your info in the forums, which I didn't send out. I'm about to do that. And because I think there are other people in that boat with you that you could join in. I like the idea of Erica saying, if you studied this way once, try a different way, maybe take the back to the book different way. I was a table memorizer. So like I went in and was like, if I can't list off everything in this table, I'm going to do it over and over again until I can. Everybody learns differently, but maybe try it a different way. So I'm going to drop the forms in, I promise. But Kim, do you want to speak to this?
Well, I also was it's reminding me, you all on social media pretty recently, right, Jessica, did a like people, I don't remember what you called it, but like other people kind of talking about their experiences when they like maybe didn't pass the exam or didn't pass the coding. And I think like that was really useful. I don't know if you're going to do more of that, but all of this, like, it's the coping model and not the mastery model kind, right? And the more that we talk about it and like get the fear, like you were saying, Erica, the better. So I thought that was really cool when you all did that on social media, Jessica.
I will drop the link to that in. Erica, is there any way to set this up so people can click on links? Because we are dropping a lot of links and I don't think anything is copyable. I guess you can click on them, but you can't like save it. I guess, okay, my recommendation I've just come to, sorry about that. Click on it and then you can copy it from your own browser. That is something I could have been doing this whole time. Anyways, we're all learning here. Okay, next question. Someone was wondering, I'm going to take out some of the specifics. They're not here, but I think the question of, I'm struggling meeting some of the requirements to have 3 of the individual clients who completed like a full stage 1 treatment while also being enrolled in a group and being able to sit on a DBT team for a year and also be on a team in a setting where my practice that I'm at isn't a fully adherent model. So my practice doesn't run a group. Or maybe I could see that being an issue with a private practice clinician. Like, I can't run a group by myself. I need a co-leader. I'm on a team, but I can't have a client and have them be in a group. Like, how suggestions on how to manage that, because they're struggling to get their 3 cases for the application and for their video.
So I want to make sure I really understand. So the situation is that where they're at, there's not a comprehensive program at their site, and so they're having to like work maybe with a person who's an individual but have to go somewhere else for group. Is that right?
Yeah, and they're trying to think like, how do you even find somewhere to go to group? Like, do you have like, or could some people in private practice I know have done like individual skills that doesn't meet the skills group requirement of their client had to be in skills group, and so just trying to troubleshoot some site issues like that.
Is it a requirement that they have to be in a skills group? Because, you know, really it's the modes and the function, right? And so if there's another way that you're meeting that function of skills training that's not in a group setting, like, would that not count?
It says while they stage 1 clinical experience in DBT is required, pick 3 clients for whom you've completed stage 1 treatment within the past 3 years as their individual therapist while they were concurrently enrolled in a DBT skills group. Now, I think you potentially could email them with your application and say, I met the function in this way, and just before you go.
I would email that in and ask about that, right?
Yeah,
Because
we
I
can't
get,
give a thumbs up here, but you can email contact@DBT-LBC. I'll put the email in the chat.
yeah, I feel like I would ask that question because it really is about like meeting the functions of the treatment, right? So that's one thought I had. I would email and ask that question.
Okay. Any other thoughts? My other thought was SciPac. Like, could you use SciPac if you're in a SciPac state and like find a skills group that they could go to virtually, or somewhere else in your state that they could go to virtually? I don't know.
There's also the DBT listserv, because I've noticed that there are a lot of different posts that people have around like, hey, looking for a virtual group in this state. Like, does anybody have any ideas? And so that may also be a resource.
I'll try to put how to get into the listserv on here if people need that. Someone just asked, can the 3 cases and or video be an adolescent?
I think so, right? I don't think does anyone know differently on this one? I don't remember reading that it needed to be an adult.
I think it just has to be like comprehensive treatment, which for an adolescent would be 6 months compared to a year.
Right.
So if you chose 3, if you're working with 3 adolescent clients, like it may be easier for you to accrue those 3 cases, Erica, compared to somebody who's like doing, 3 adults, just in terms of length of treatment. So that could be an advantage toward submitting adolescent tapes and doing DBT with teens.
Thank you.
Someone asked if we know if the exam's ever gonna be in Spanish. I don't know anything about that. Does anybody else know?
That would make sense.
That would make sense.
It would make sense.
Follow up on it. I have a list of things to follow up on, so I'll ask, but I don't know.
No, this is so great. Like, thanks for coming, because I think this helps us as DBT-LBC members to figure out, one, how to make this more accessible for a lot of folks. And I think it's also an opportunity for us to build community. So I think we're going to have another one in May, right?
Yes, I don't have a date yet, but
You
it
can
will.
find it on the socials, because these town halls are just going to be the thing that we do regularly in the hopes of strengthening our DBT community.
Okay, I have 2 quick ones that got submitted that I think we can just do, and then we can kind of wrap up with some information for next time. Is there a time frame in which my initial application expires? I know we talked about this before. Our answer was not that we know of, that you can get extensions.
Not that we know of.
But if you know ahead of time that you're going to need a bunch of time, you could ask before getting started. But I personally got extensions. So there's that. And then someone asked about, is there a mentor program for the certification process, which we've been talking about for so
We're
long.
working on it. Oh my gosh.
I love that they want that. Like, we're gonna love the rest of this. I'm just gonna read it because I was so happy about the question. Is there a mentor program for the certification process? Because if a mentor is a clinician of color, this would be extra supported, as I'm a clinician of color and love to talk to someone who is like me. Like that. we're working on it.
We are
This
actively working on this right
is our
now.
first
Yes.
step to it, and we're gonna do more steps. So I'm glad that there's interest for that. Okay. I think I've answered everyone's questions, submitted and not submitted. So let me know if there's more stuff. I'm going to drop the Google form one more time. We are going to be meeting in May, date to be determined, but the focus of May is going to be around questions about the application, but questions that are not about the application and about our other stages are totally welcome. We just thought it might be helpful to start with a little bit of application information and just help talk about that. But if you have any more questions, I'll stay for a little bit and try to answer some of those. But thank you guys for coming, and Erica and Kim, thank you so much for all your information today.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Oh, Erica and Kim, someone just said, thank you for this. I started my application months and months ago and have just been in avoiding. This has been such an helpful opposite action for me. I'm going to get started. Like, oh, the most rewarding comment I've ever read.
Isn't that awesome? Yes.
Yes.
Love
Heck
it.
yeah. That's awesome. You got this. I'm not going to say your name because it was a direct message, but you've got it.
You know who you are.
You are, and anyone else has it.